have your attention? We're about to begin. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you very much. Tonight's program is a joint venture between the Manalapan Jewish Connection and Mammoth Torah Links. It is a privilege to partner with Rabbi Yitzchak Oretz and Mammoth Torah Links. The shul has really transformed the Manalapan Marlborough community with their warm rabbis, inspirational classes, their phenomenal Hebrew school, the inspirational davening, and much, much more. It's an honor to partner with you. Tonight is sponsored by the Steinberg family in memory of Dr. Steinberg's mother, Elia Daphne Bas Yosef. May the merit of the sponsorship of this program serve as an aliyah for her neshama. And it's also sponsored by Greg and Robin Stern. So thank you very much. Rabbi Jacoby and myself, we represent the Manalapan Jewish Connection. We provide inspirational Jewish programming in Manalapan. If you are interested in any of our programs, please, there's a list of them outside. And between the two organizations, the MJC and Mammoth Torah Links, there are a ton of study opportunities, one-on-one, classes, various programs and rabbis you can reach out to. So if you, now right before Shavuos is definitely the time to start learning Torah, or maybe increase learning Torah, and there are definitely plenty of rabbis to reach out to, so feel free, and there's a sign-up sheet outside if you are interested. The dinner, right. Also, the Mammoth Torah Links soiree is coming up, not a dinner, but a soiree, which is very nice, at the Burkos on June 19th, 2019.
June 16th.
I'm sorry, June 16th, I can't read. It says June 16th, that was my fault. Yeah, it was the, okay, there are these things by the drinks, you can pick one up. And also, Rabbi Oretz gives a Parsha class every Thursday night, if that is what interests you. So Rabbi Becher is a man who needs no introduction, but nevertheless, I will introduce him. Rabbi Mordechai Becher, originally from Australia, is a senior lecturer of the Gateways organization and an instructor in Jewish history and philosophy at Yeshiva University. He started Or Sameach Tannenbaum College in Neve Yerushalayim in Jerusalem for 15 years. He served in the Israel Defense Forces and taught in rabbinic training programs. Rabbi Becher has answered thousands of questions on the Ask the Rabbi website. His latest book, Gateway to Judaism, published by Art Scroll, is now in its 9th printing, which I saw someone has over there. 9th printing. Rabbi Becher presents a Talmud class, Dimensions of the Daf, on Jewish broadcasting services. Has taught in Canada, the United States, England, Israel, South Africa, Australia, Russia. He's conducted tours in Africa, Australia, China, Europe, Russia, Israel, and he's spoken in Manalapan and now Marlborough, and it is an honor to introduce Rabbi Becher.
Thank you for the introduction. I can hardly wait to hear myself speak now. It is in the 9th printing because they only print 5 copies a shot. So I'm hoping 3. So thank you very much. My ego is really great. Yeah. So I apologize for my hirsute state, but we are in a period between Pesach and Shavuot, in which, although originally was a very happy period, because what could be better, got out of Egypt, heading to Sinai, heading to the Holy Land, etc. Awesome time. But historically some negative things happened. Of course, the students of Rabbi Akiva who died either as a result of a plague or possibly in the Bar Kokhba revolt, depending on the sources you read. And on a more recently, but 11th century, we have the Crusades that cut a swath through the Jewish communities in the Rhineland in Europe, and so hence there is some level of mourning that we observed during this period of time. It wasn't just like I forgot to shave on the way here, you know. So the subject for this evening: men and women, gender. I'll only be discussing 2 of the genders primarily, right? But men and women will hopefully discuss some of the way in which the Torah, which Judaism views male and female prototypes and the ideals. Hopefully this will also, we'll talk about marriage as part of that, very important component. And my actually anniversary is coming up very soon. I still remember my engagement. I asked my wife, said, "Chavi, would you like to get married?" She said, "Sure, to whom?" So a bit of negotiation, and she settled on me. But anyway, we'll discuss some of these issues. And if we want to talk about male and female, we want to talk about any issue. The way we approach it is we look in the Torah. We start with the paradigms of the Bible, of the Torah, and there are two major paradigms for male and female in the Torah itself. The first, and that's the most obvious, is of course Adam. Adam. Adam, Ha-Adam, is a term we use for a human being. Ha-Adam, we are all Adam. We're all humans. But it's interesting, the way the Torah describes the creation, and there's twice that the Torah describes the creation of humanity. The first says the following, Genesis 1:27. It says, Vayivra Hashem Elokim es ha'adam b'tzalmo. The Lord God created the Adam, the human, b'tzalmo, in his image. B'tzelem Elokim bara oto. In the image of God he created him, that's singular. Zachar unekeva bara otam. Male and female he created them. Now this is before there is any mention of Eve. This is before there's any mention of that. All we have here is, the son is doing great. Just love him. Right, love him. Anyway, so before we have any mention of Eve, we have this Adam who is created and is described as God creates this Adam in his image, and that's in singular, bara oto. And then the second part of the sentence it says, male and female, he created them. Very, very strange. Later on, in the next chapter, the Torah says that God brought all the animals before Adam, he gave them names. And in other words, he showed, he understood their essence, etc. And I won't go into that, but... And then it says, the Adam lo matzah, he did not find a mate for the man. And then it says, the only time in all of Genesis where it says not good, I mean, it says good all the time, right? God saw that it was good, God saw that it was good, 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 good. There's one place that says lo tov, not good. The one place that says not good, lo tov, heyot ha'adam levado. It is not good for the Adam to be alone. Now, that's interesting. And then it says he took his cellar. Cellar, there's numerous translations of the word cellar. We usually translate it as rib, although in the Talmud, one of the translations is side, another translation is face, there's translation even tail. Right? Look, it's hard to understand what that means. But okay, all these various translations. And then it talks about, he creates Chava, Eve, and he says, and God says, I'll make him Ezer Kenegdo, an opposing helper. And it says, therefore a man shall leave his mother and father and cling to his wife. V'hayu lebasar echad, and they will become one flesh. So, if we look at this, we have the first human is both male and female. First humans, Zachar unekeva bara otam. He created them, male and female. But that's only one, it's one being who's both male and female, which is very strange, although we're familiar with this from Michael Jackson. But nevertheless, we have this idea of this original human being. Sorry for the fans of anyway, but we have this original human being, this individual who is both male and female. As the Gemara puts it, du partsufim. Du partsufim means two faces, a male and a female component. And then what happens later is God splits this being into two parts. One part is known as the male, whose name is Adam, not Ha-Adam but Adam, and the female is called Chava, in English Eve. Remember we had, which means that Chava comes from the word Chayim, life, the mother of all flesh. I have a friend of my parents, I remember when she made Aliyah, and I saw her in Israel, and her name is Eva. So I used to call her Aunt Eva. And I said, Aunt Eva, you're changing your name to Chava. And she says, Mordechai. I don't want to walk around being called mother of all flesh. We'll just stay with Eva. You know, it's much better that way. So, But there's this split. And I remember one of my kids asked me, we were talking about this at the Shabbat table, and one of my kids asked me, he said, I don't get it. So Hashem says, God says, you shall become one flesh. He says they already were one. And Hashem split them up. And then he says, become one again. This seems to be unnecessary work. It's like a government department might do. Right? God forbid, right, exactly. I don't know how to compare. Lahavdil. Right? But clearly, he created them as one. He then splits them in two. And then he says, get back and become one again. And one answer to that, and I think it's the obvious answer, is that God created the potential for unity between the male and female. That we couldn't become one unless we once were one. The potential has to already exist in the world. So God creates the world with a certain potential, spiritual, physical potentials, and then what he does is he obscures them or he splits it apart, and he allows us, not just allows, but he obligates us to recreate and to recapture that original primordial unity that the human had. And that really, when you think about it, is the essence of all of creation. Very famously, the Torah starts with which letter? Beit. Beit, second letter of the alphabet. Second letter. Bereshit, in the beginning God created. And the question you could ask is, I mean, if you were writing the Bible, right, something I've considered ArtScroll rejected, right, but if I was writing the Bible, wouldn't it symbolically be better to start with the letter Aleph? One. Silent. Start with one. Well, yeah, but you could figure out a way to do it. Yeah. So Elokim bara, something like that. Start with an Aleph. Start with the letter one. Symbolically, it looks much better. The Torah starts not with the letter one, Aleph, but with the second letter, Beit, which means two. And it's not simple, but the explanation I think is the following: that the creation of a physical world is very similar to the splitting apart of Adam into two parts. In a sense, before there is a creation, God's unity is all there is. God creates the world. There is now at least the illusion of plurality. There is the illusion of division. What we see is Beit. We see two-ness. Two-ness, not North Africa, two-ness, but two-ness with a W. We see a world in which there's division. And God deliberately did it so, because He gives us the opportunity to recapture the Aleph and to get from the Beit, the two, back to the Aleph, which is oneness. And so the world starts with Beit because creation is a split. It's, so to speak, creates a separation between the creator and the created. There's a separation between you and I. There's a separation between the physical and the spiritual. There's separation. So creation is actually an act of separation, an act of withdrawal to some degree. Because God gives us the opportunity to get from the Beit to back to the Aleph, one. And you can see that in the way we spend a lot of our lives trying to find one. Many people spend a lot of their life, a lot of money, and a lot of effort trying to find one other person with whom to become one with. Not everyone is successful. There are people, there are divorces, there are separations, there are people who never find the other, but people spend... A good friend of mine just recently told me his wife walked out on him. I said, my God, that's terrible. What happened? She said she was going out to get milk. Never came back. No. I said, my God, how are you getting on? He says, we had some creamer at home, so it wasn't so bad. But people do spend an incredible amount of effort in trying to pursue unity. Find that one person with whom I'll become one. A lot of us, thank God, succeed in that, but not everyone. But that is part of the desire of the human to go from Beit to one. We also find this in other areas of life. For example, we get together for mass sporting events, which you could probably see much better on a large OED television screen, sitting on a comfortable couch at home, with your choice of beer, not surrounded by Cro-Magnons and Neanderthals. and other Jets fans, but rather, but nevertheless, people do this because it's a feeling of oneness, it's a feeling of unity, and we pursue that. And if we can find that at a football stadium with 50,000 other screaming fans, that's great. But we definitely feel that. It's incredible unity. As Jews, we seek out other Jews. When you travel, I do these tours in the summer, which is the only way to actually monetize a degree in Jewish history. So I do these tours in summer, and whenever we go to the Chabad house in Bangkok, lots of Israelis, right, secular Israelis, all hanging out at Kosher Restaurant. Right, they're hanging out with each other. They want to hang out with other Jews. So the largest Passover Seder, there's actually this past year, was also at an island off the coast of Thailand. Beautiful place. I was there. Koh Samui, a Seder, 3,000, mostly Israeli backpackers at Chabad house there. The second largest, I think, is in Kathmandu in Nepal. Also Israeli backpackers. People seek out oneness. They're seeking out their fellow Jews, seeking out fellow Israelis. It's a pursuit of oneness, and that's a beautiful thing. And so the human being was created as one, similar to God, who is one. But that oneness, which comprised of both a male and a female part, was split by God, just like the world. Creation was created with a bait too. So that oneness was split, and then God gives the human being the task of recreating the oneness. V'hayu, just a little later, v'hayu l'basar echad, they will become one flesh. The male and female will become one once again. And that was the ideal, and that is the ideal, and that actually, it's interesting to note, that's the purpose of marriage. We often think, many people think, that the purpose of marriage is procreation, reproduction, have children. And that is certainly part of it. I think my children would agree that's certainly part of it. But that's not the end, that's not the be-all and end-all of it. In fact, it's very interesting to note, there are two totally separate commandments regarding marriage and regarding intimacy. One of them is pru urvu, pirya v'rivya. It's actually the first commandment in the Torah given to us. There was a commandment beforehand given to Adam, but the commandment given to us, pru urvu, have children. And but there's a separate commandment known as mitzvat onah. The mitzvah, the obligation to provide pleasure to one's spouse, which is completely independent of the mitzvah of reproduction. Because even when the woman cannot have children, for example, either because of her age or because she's pregnant or whatever reason it is, there is still an obligation, there's still a mitzvah of intimacy. And that mitzvah of intimacy is obviously nothing to do with reproduction, nothing to do with having children. It is part of the idea of unity. In fact, the Zohar is the Jewish mystical text, which is like written as in the form of a type of a running commentary with stories and discussions, etc., on the 5 books of Moses and the 5 scrolls. A vast and amazing work. So the Zohar, attributed to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai and his students, whose anniversary of his passing is next week, Thursday, I think a week from, next Thursday is Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer. Traditionally, that's when he transmitted the deepest parts of the Zohar. It was on the day that he passed away. So the Zohar tells us that the Shekhinah, which means divine presence, and when we talk about divine presence, clearly we believe that God permeates all time and all space equally. Late atar de panui minei, there is no place devoid of godliness, of God. It couldn't exist if it was devoid of God. God sustains everything at all times. So when we talk about Shekhinah, the divine presence, what do we mean by the divine presence? We talk about the divine presence at the Western Wall, the Kotel. The divine presence rests in Israel. Divine presence, what does that mean? God's everywhere, all places and all times. I remember that I was giving a class at the Carlton Hotel in Manhattan to a group of students from California, and it faces, I forgot the street, 29th maybe, and there's a large window behind me facing the street, and I'm speaking to the students. I mentioned this idea that God's presence permeates all time and space equally. And as I say this, all the students are like, oh, whoa! I look behind me, a truck has just pulled up behind me. On the side in huge letters it says God. Guaranteed overnight delivery. But it was perfect, thank you, it was perfect timing. As I said, God's presence permeates all time and space. The truck pulls up. It's like unbelievable. It was the greatest moment in my educational career. But the question which the Zohar and others address is, how do you even speak about Shekhinah, divine presence? God's everywhere, all times. What do you mean, the divine presence? So the way it's understood, at least by the Sforno and some others, is the following. They say, we believe that there's a soul as well. You can't detect the soul equally in every aspect of the human being. You can't detect the presence of the soul in my elbow. Some people could, some people can. But where do you detect the presence of the soul primarily? In the face. In the face. You look at the person's face. It's where the soul manifests itself more in the face than anywhere else. And so, with God as well, yes, God's presence permeates all of time and space equally. However, you cannot perceive His presence equally. There are times when you can feel the presence of God more than other times. Yom Kippur afternoon as the sun sets and we are saying the Ilah. That's a time where God's presence is more palpable. You can feel it more. There are places where you can feel God's presence more. The Western Wall would be an example. Hebron, the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs. Tzfat, holy city of Tzfat. There are places and times. So the Zohar says that in the home, the Shekhinah also rests in your home. The Shekhinah, the divine presence, can be detected in the home. But the Zohar says the following thing. It says, the degree to which the divine presence is manifested in the home is directly proportional to the degree of joy, happiness, and love between a husband and wife. It's pretty shocking. The Zohar is telling us that the degree of divine presence in the home directly proportional to the degree of love, pleasure, happiness between husband and wife. And the reason for this, there are many explanations, but I'll give you the correct one. But the explanations for this are that it's based on the Tanya, which is that God oneness seeks oneness. Inasmuch as God is what we call Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem, Echad, God is one. Echad, Yachid Umiyuchad, He is one. He is the only one, and He is unique oneness. So therefore, oneness seeks out oneness, the receptacle, the place where God's presence can be felt, where God seeks out to dwell, is a place where there is a sense of unity, where we've got back to the oneness. So also with the Jewish people, historically, the Talmud points out that God's presence rested amongst the Jewish people was primarily dependent upon the unity amongst the Jewish people. There were certain generations where people did idol worship, all types of sins. Idol worship is pretty heavy. That's a very serious sin. Okay. But they had success militarily and they had success financially. Why, the Talmud says? Because they did not have discord amongst themselves. There was unity. So when there's unity, God's there. And when the Jewish people, there were periods of history where the Jewish people were righteous, pious, apparently, frum. They were not worshipping idols. They were only drinking wines with 5 separate kashrut supervisions, as is the wines that I usually get. So, but nevertheless, they were not successful militarily. They were not successful in their conquest. They were not successful. Why? Because there was discord and hatred amongst them. So it's oneness that we're going for. So when God creates the human, male, female, He created them, but in one unit, and then He splits them into 2, the male part and the female part. And He tells the male and female part, "V'hayu lebasar echad," they shall become one. They shall become one. In other words, to seek and become that unity once again. Now, And that we see again, as I said, in the laws of marriage. The very mitzvot of marriage are actually about that idea. So that's the first paradigm of male and female. And how do we become one? So here we turn to an idea, and as if you want to read one book about this subject, I must recommend Miriam Cosman's book. Anyone heard of Miriam Cosman's book? Phenomenal. It's called Circle, Arrow, and Spiral. Circle, Arrow, Spiral, Exploring Gender in Judaism. It's actually her doctoral thesis as well, but phenomenal, phenomenal book by Miriam Cosman. I highly recommend it. I get no benefit from recommending this book. I have no financial interest whatsoever. It's a fantastic book. And one of the things she points out is that, if you look at cultures, and we have to generalize here a little bit. If you would describe Western culture versus the Eastern cultures, India versus the United States. Today, it's not so obvious because today, Western culture has spread all over. So it's not quite, Eastern culture is not quite as pure as it used to be. There's a lot of cross-pollination, etc. But in the general paradigm of Western culture is very much about excellence, accomplishment, progress. What is it lacking in? Harmony, wholeness, completeness. The Western world is about move, progress, do it. Just do it. Just do it. Action, excellence, make the sale. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. We actually even have one person who got in through LinkedIn, right? Recommended by a student of mine. But right, so I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I mean, most of the stuff on LinkedIn is about what? Get the sale. I mean, it is designed for business, right? Understandable, and it's a very Western thing. Like, get out there, get it, etc. So, and Western culture is to a very great degree like that. That's why it's interesting. There's a very fascinating, weird midrash, old rabbinic idea, which says it compares Western culture, Rome. It compares Rome to the pig. The pig, yes, the chazir. Why? And it compares Arabic culture. It compares to the camel. Now, that's not just because, okay, the Romans ate pig and the Arabs rode camels and ate camel and had camel milk, etc. That's all true. But there's something deeper to it, which is in the laws of kashrut, there's two signs that make a mammal kosher. What are they? Cloven hoof, right? The split hoof, and an ungulate, ruminant, right? It's a ruminant, right? It has 4 stomachs and it chooses cud, etc. So it's interesting. So one interpretation of that midrash is the following: Roman Western culture, the pig has one sign of kashrut. It doesn't chew its cud, but what does it have? Split hooves. In other words, progress, move forward. The camel has one sign of kashrut. It chews its cud, doesn't have a split hoof, doesn't have a hoof at all, doesn't have a split hoof. Right? So, interesting, chewing the cud is what? It's all about the past, regurgitating the past. So some cultures are very much into the past, regurgitation, chewing the cud. Some cultures are only about move, progress. Judaism compared to the sheep. 2 signs of kashrut, both moving forward, but also based on the past. I remember I had a poster in my room when I was a kid from the Jewish Agency, and the poster was an ancient Judean clay vessel, and inside of it was a conical flask from a lab. And underneath it says, "Our future is where our past is," which is so true. Right? The greatest single project of the Jewish people today, the state of Israel. It's our future is where our past is. Right? And it's unbelievable. So Eastern culture, to a great degree, is very different from the West in the fact that it's about being, harmony, completeness. It's more static. The emphasis on meditation, the emphasis on being, the emphasis on simplicity. You look at the Zen gardens, for example, and simplicity, being, wholeness. So I don't know how true this is in terms of culture, because there are exceptions, but in general, there are two two types of forces here. There's one which is movement, progress, go, 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 symbolized by an arrow. And our sages tell us that's very much the male side of things. Doing, movement, get the prize, etc., etc. What an anthropologist might call the hunter-gatherer. Whereas you've got another type of paradigm, which is more like the Eastern paradigm, which is about being, wholeness, harmonious, tranquility. That we describe more as the circle, the female side. So you've got the male side, as our Kabbalists tell us, is very much like the arrow, which is movement, getting, attainment, excellence, accomplishment, progress. The female side is about harmony, wholeness, and completeness. Now, the Jewish ideal is the harmony between the two. What will be a harmony between an arrow and a circle? A spiral. Miriam Cosman tells us that it's a spiral, and actually it's interesting because the spiral combines, it moves upwards, there's the movement, but it maintains the harmonious whole. Each person has within themselves some level, some male and some female aspects. And obviously we go through life, there are times and situations where the male aspect is more emphasized. There are times and situations with the female aspect. So I'll give you an example. Prayer. Would you say prayer is more male or female? Where do we learn most of our rules and philosophy of prayer from? From whom do we learn it? Hannah, correct. Hannah, the mother of Shmuel, Samuel the prophet, she did not have a child for a long time. She prayed. And actually from her prayer, the Talmud derives most of the major ideas about our central prayer, which is called the Shemona Esrei, from her. And some examples. Let me give you an example. One of the ideas of prayer is actually stillness. Example, how do we stand when we say our silent prayers? It's called the Shemona Esrei, the Amidah. Shemona Esrei is interesting. It's 18 blessings. Although we've had 19 blessings for approximately 2,000 years, we still call it the Shemona Esrei. We're still not used to the. Okay, but whatever. Right. But we stand. It's called the Amidah. The other term for it is Amidah. How do we stand? With our feet together. With our feet together. Why do we stand with our feet together? Well, it's interesting. Standing with your feet together, what does that do to you? It immobilizes you. Right? Mod nom, mod nach, mod hopshi. Right? Yeah. Kshev. So when you stand with your feet together, that's like immobilization. So what we're doing with Amidah is stillness. Just the very fact that I put my feet together, like the angels who are called omdim, stationary beings, and they're described as though they have one foot. Is standing with our feet together is type of a way of expressing the concept of entering into the female mode of being, which is not active, get up and go, grab, but rather more about being. Being. Another example. Now, obviously there are times we do actions. There are a lot of commandments which involve action, which is the more the male mode. But I'll give you another example. Shabbat. Shabbos. What is Shabbos about? It's not about doing. It's much more about being. It's much more about being. Just to enjoy, just the Havaya is just being. The world to come, the future world, will be a world in which the female component becomes more emphasized. It'll be a world of less doing and much more being. It's very hard for us to relate to just being. You know, the Torah doesn't speak about the world to come, life after death. There's very little mention of it in the 5 books of Moses. In the prophets there's more. 5 books of Moses has very oblique references to it, but very little about it. And there are numerous reasons given for that absence, but one of them is that it's a little bit psychological. You know, it's about, because the world to come is not a world of doing, it's a world of being. Very hard for many of us to relate to just being. let's say I would tell you, you get a chance to spend, best place you ever had vacation. 4 seasons in Koh Samui. Okay. Gorgeous. You've got 2 days there. Yeah, okay. I say, okay, give you a week there. Oh, that's awesome, right? 10 days. How about 2 weeks? A month? How about a year?
No, you want to go with that.
Yeah, exactly. How about eternity? Now, it doesn't sound very attractive to us because we're very much involved in the male side, which is the world of doing. This is the olam ha'asiyah, the world of action, the world of doing. Right? But occasionally we have tastes of the world to come. Shabbat is called a ma'ain olam haba, a taste of the world to come, because on Shabbos we're not doing, we're being. We like al yetzer ish mimkoma, don't, we just stick around where we are. We don't walk too far. We don't organise the economy. We don't mess with the ecosystem. We don't kill ants and stuff. Right? We just leave it. Just be. Let them be as well. One day a week. So that's to a certain degree very much like the feminine world. So therefore, humans have to have a combination. So you've got to be a complete human. You need the combination of the doing and the being. You need the arrow, and you need the circle to become a spiral. And so therefore that's what actually it's about. Marriage and the relationship between male and female is very much about this concept of having, and that's why the Torah says when it describes in the second creation description narrative of Adam and Eve, it describes God creating Ezer Kenegdo. What does Ezer mean? Help. Kenegdo? Against. That's type of weird, right? Because what does it mean? If you're helping, you're not against. If you're against, you're not helping. I remember when I used to do home repairs when my kids were little. So the kids would always say, "Help, Abba. I want to help you." They'd bring out their little plastic tools. And I knew that it would take me twice as long when the kids are helping. That's called negdo. That's opposing. That's not helping. So what does it mean, opposing helper? So there's a few different explanations. I'll just give you a couple of them. But one is the following. The thumb. Our thumb is absolutely incredible. What do we call it? It's an opposable thumb. It's an opposable thumb. You see, if you don't have the opposable thumb, very hard to do stuff. First of all, you cannot text. You cannot press the space bar, you can't type properly, right, etc. You can't play video games, right? It's unbelievable. You can't hitch, right? It's unbelievable. Right? It makes you wonder, like before we had texting, like people will walk around for like 15,000 years. What the heck is this for? Like, what do you do with this, man? So, but you see, the greatest help your fingers can have is something coming from the opposite direction. Animals without the opposable thumb, as is explicit in The Far Side by Gary Larson, right, have a very great difficulty in doing stuff like opening doorknobs. That's why your dog stays in. Right. So the opposable thumb. So sometimes the greatest help a person can have in life is to have someone coming from an opposite direction, different direction. So the male needs the female point of view. The female, less, needs the male point of view. But we do contribute some. There's some level of, right? But there's each one. In fact, the full human picture of the world is a picture of the world seen through both male and female eyes. If the world is only seen through male eyes, it's seen in one way. It's only seen, and there are differences. We know psychologically, it's fascinating. My wife told me about a study. She Hebrew University. She did a degree. Her master's was in psychology of reading, and there was a study. I remember she mentioned to me about the type of books that are chosen by men and women for kids are actually interesting. There's some statistics of different choices. What are the type of books that men will very often choose? And what are the type of books that women will often choose? Anyone?
Sports or for
sports.
Thing.
That's.
And then the other one is caretaker.
Not quite, but close. Yeah, close. Very often, the men will choose a book which is about how does this work, right? feed the kid facts, right, etc. And the mother will choose a book which is much more about developing the imagination, the emotion, etc., etc. Right. Had it only been up to me in terms of my children's reading, we have 5 boys and a girl. We would have experts in tractors. Right. Probably lousy fathers and husbands, but experts in tractors and motorcycles, internal combustion engines, slow, no, like that. Right. So, thank God, that had my wife's influence as well. And I'm away a lot, so it's even better, right? So, but yeah, there are differences in that. And those are the two, that's the Ezer Kenegdot, two opposing halves, which actually complete each other and give two ways. And there's another aspect of it as well. In this paradigm of the world, it's actually also about love, obviously. But, and this is a very famous idea from one of the great rabbis, philosophers of the last century, Rav Eliyahu Eliezer Dessler. Rav Dessler, he talks about the idea of giving. When God creates the world, created the world, creates the world, etc., what did he do? He gave us the opportunity to give. Because you see, he doesn't need anything. God existed before the world, Adon Olam Asher Malach B'Terem Kol Yitzir Nivra, God who ruled before anything was created. He doesn't need the world, he created it for us. And he allows us to give something, so to speak, to him, which is what we give to him is ourselves, our free will. We give to him, we reveal God in the world, reveal godliness in the world. So actually, when you give, giving is not only about here, take that. Giving is also about giving someone the opportunity to be a giver. In fact, that's a more subtle method of giving. Right? To be a good receiver is very good giving. In other words, someone comes and brings you something, a gift, etc., and you say, oh, thanks. Right? Or this is it. Right? That obviously, to be a good receiver, I'm giving someone an opportunity to give. That's real giving. That's actually a giving very similar to God. Because God has given us opportunity to give. The male and female also, it's about giving as well. That creates the bond, and that actually creates unity. When you give to someone, you give yourself to someone, that means some of you is in there. We love, for instance, Rav Dessler points out the fact that people love inanimate objects. Nothing weird here, but for example, if anyone is into gardening, I mean, I just mowed the lawn today. That's about the extent of my gardening. I mow the lawn, right? But people who are into gardening and plant, I mean, we've killed. I've killed an artificial plant. I mean, I don't know. Someone gave us bamboo plants, the fastest growing plant in the world. It was stunted. It was like unbelievable. It was like a bonsai bamboo. I don't know. Anyway, but people love their garden, right? If you are into gardening and you've created this garden, do you not love the garden? What? Is that weird? You love a garden? I mean, it's plants. Not even conscious plants. Not like triffids or, etc., the little shop of horrors. I mean, there's... Not that that's a lovable plant, but that's whatever, right? They're not... So why do we love the plants?
They're beautiful.
They are beautiful, yes. I don't love everything that's beautiful. That's right, I've nurtured it. I've invested myself in it. I've given myself to the garden, so to speak.
And you don't think plants are handsome.
That's also, that's interesting, true, right? Except for Venus flytraps. Anyway, but you see, you've given yourself to them. So there's a little bit of yourself invested in those plants. So it's, to a certain degree, it's the giving that created the love. You loved it. Rav Dessler, in his personal life, experienced this. He was living in Lithuania when the Second World War broke out. His wife and daughter managed to escape. They only were able to get visas for the two of them. They went to, as far as he knew, they were going towards France. Of course, France was eventually occupied by Germany, so they made it to England. But in England, inasmuch as they had, I think, passports of a hostile country to England, so a lot of Jews who came as refugees to England were sent to Australia during the Second World War because they were enemy aliens. Right? So they're sent to Australia. So his wife and daughter end up in Australia during the Second World War. He had no idea where they were. No idea. Didn't know. And they were eventually reunited after the war. Not, a lot of people were not, but they were reunited after the war. And Rav Dessler said his relationship with his daughter, obviously, one of the most painful aspects of this whole situation was that he could never have regained the relationship with the daughter that his wife had. Because she had given and nurtured that daughter, and he had no opportunity to do that. He was, they were worlds apart, no communication. He says, and when you give to someone, you love them. And who gives more to the child when they're young? Generally, it's not exclusively so, but in generally it's the mother. And there's a relationship which is based on the giving when you love those whom you give. I know that interflora and florists will tell you that you give to the one you love. But Rav Dessler says you actually love the one to whom you give. By giving, you actually create, nurture and expand that love. Love is through giving. And on the contrary, very often, a lot of times people use the word love, and it's a very famous idea that Rav Dessler says, very often people use the word love in the exact opposite sense of what it's meant to be. Love is usually about giving, and that's the essence of love. In fact, in Hebrew, the Hebrew word for love, ahava means love. The two middle letters, hav means give. In the Torah, havli banim, give me children. Heila chazera, here is your seed. Hav means to give. So the two middle letters of ahava, love, means giving. And the numerical value of the word love is 13, which is the same as the numerical value of 1, echad. And love, ahava. No? And that's not by coincidence. We don't believe it's by coincidence. I can't prove it. But it's because it creates that unity. But how do we often use the word love? Someone walks into a restaurant. This is the example Rav Dessler gives. Someone walks into a restaurant. The waiter comes over. He says, "G'day, mate. My name's Bruce." I say, "G'day, Bruce." I say, "What's the special today?" He says, "The salmon." I say, "Oh, great. I love salmon." He says, "Do you?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "You love salmon, do you?" I said, "Uh-huh." He says, "Come with me." Come with me! Right? So I said, "What the?" So he takes me to the back of the restaurant. I'm thinking, what the heck is going on here, right? And, it's gone down 15%. The tip is now at 10. You know what I mean? 10%. Right? And he takes me to a large fish tank at the back of the restaurant. He says, "What is in the tank?" I said, "Salmon." He says, "Yeah." He says, "Mr. Salmon Lover." He says, "If you order salmon, you know what we're going to do?" I said, I could guess. He said, No, let me tell you. We're going to take the salmon out of the tank. Okay. He says, "You don't love salmon." True, right? The salmon looked happy when it's in the water. You're going to eat it, it's going to die. So he says, "You know who you love?" The waiter says, "You love yourself." Because it's true. When I say I love salmon, what do I actually mean? I love myself, and the pleasure I get from the consumption of charred salmon carcass is pleasing to me. And if the salmon has to die for that, so be it. And so a lot of people, when they say I love him or her, unfortunately mean very similar idea. I love myself, and the financial, social, sexual pleasure I get from him, her is pleasing to me. If they have to suffer a little bit, so be it. And then love there is all about taking. Listen to how Erich Fromm, brilliant psychologist, Erich Fromm describes in his book The Art of Loving, Erich Fromm describes it in the following way. This is, careful, take out some tissues, this is very romantic. For the man, an attractive girl, and for the woman, an attractive man are the prizes they are after. Attractive usually means a nice package of qualities which are popular and sought after on the personality market. I am out for a bargain. The object should be desirable from the standpoint of its social value, and at the same time should want me, considering my overt and hidden assets and potentialities. Two persons thus fall in love when they feel they have found the best object available on the market, considering the limitations of their own exchange value. Is that beautiful? It's just, I cry every time I read this. It's like beautiful. Unfortunately, for many, it is an accurate description. However, Rav Dessler tells us what the ideal is. The ideal is that here I'm looking for a person to whom I want to give myself. I want to give everything. I want to give my life itself. Interesting. One of the great Kabbalists discusses kissing. The Torah first mentions a kiss when Yaakov kisses Rachel. It says, and he kisses her and he cries. Interesting. So, I think maybe Rabbeinu Bachai or Rabbi Nachum Rei Kanati, one of the two. He says, kissing is a strange thing, isn't it? Like, no genetic value, no reproductive value. It's like just saliva. I mean, it's like, you know. So what's going on? So he says it's an expression of the desire of one person to give their very life to the other. That's what ultimately a kiss is. It's I want to give my very breath of life to this other person. So, and it's interesting, right? We kiss people when even when there's no sexual component, right? Kiss your children, kiss your grandmother, kiss, right? It's not, right? That is, it's not about sexuality. What it's about is the desire to give myself to the other. I would give my life for you, and it's giving, not taking. So true love that God wants to have, hayulu basarcha, when they become one flesh, one being, that oneness is created by the act of giving, the act of love and giving. And that's really where the focus should be in the relationship. So that is our first paradigm from Adam and Eve. And very often we're afraid to put ourselves in the receiving position, so to speak, because receiving makes you vulnerable and you like being in control. The courage to make yourself vulnerable to someone and to receive from them, that shows actual real strength. And, you know, insisting all the time that I can do everything on my own, type of like a pseudo-independence, is really escaping actually what love should be. Now, little kids want that. Like little kids. I remember going with my kids to the Kinneret. We went to the Kinneret, and I was holding one of my kids. I forgot how old he was, but he could not swim. He was maybe 2.5, something like that. And the water is up to here, and I'm holding him, and there's like some waves, and he keeps saying, "Self, self." I said, "You can't swim." He says, "Self, self." He wants to go by himself. Right? Crazy, right? You can't go by yourself. But when adults do that, I can do it myself. I don't need you. That's a reject. That hurts, not being needed. So there's giving doesn't only mean I give to you. Giving can also be accomplished by taking from you, right? It all depends on what's going on in the mind. In other words, I could give, when a drug company gives a doctor a beautiful desk set, they're not like doing it because we just love you. What they want is that he should prescribe the drug. Right? It's a type of a bribe, I guess, right? Or maybe a reminder every time you say, well, you should take, what's the time? Oh, right, now we'll give, right, I don't think people actually do that, but it's not about giving. If someone gives me a compliment, I know at the end of the semester, there's a student comes over to me, he says, "Oh, you look great today, Rabbi." If the final is next week, I know why he's doing that. I don't hear that from at the beginning, you know. It's like, well, sometimes finals are type of like the reading of the will of a great uncle. You know what I mean? You never saw him at all during the lifetime. Comes to the will reading, everyone's there. It's unbelievable, right? But yeah, that's not giving. You can give me a compliment. You want something. So giving, or for example, let's say someone invites me to a wedding, and it's a schlep and a half. It's Brooklyn. My God, it's driving hell, basically. I don't go to Brooklyn. And parking, and the valet parking, they'll steal something. Who knows? Like, right? It's a schlep. I get to Brooklyn, right? You're right. I am eating whatever, how much each plate costs, whatever it is, $75. I don't know how much it costs, right? I probably don't eat $75 worth of food, right? And so yes, I'm getting 75, but who's giving? I think I'm giving. So whether you're giving or receiving is not about who's getting the actual object is changing hands, etc. It's really about what's in your mind. You can be taking for someone, receiving. When the kid comes home from crafts, kids used to go to this carpentry class in Har Nof in Israel at the Matnas local community centre. They'd come home with these unidentifiable wooden objects. You know, and it'd say, "This is for you, Abba." Now, I don't say, "Listen, kid, I paid for this. I pay for your education, I pay for your food, etc. What is this? What you're giving me? Right. That is evil. That's evil. Right? What I say is, oh, this is fantastic, thank you. Right? I'll use it for... right? I don't know. But yes, I've taken something, but I'm a giver if I do it in the right way. That's how it's supposed to be between the male and female. The next paradigm is Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. The patriarchs and the matriarchs. They're the next paradigm. We're going to finish with this, but it's interesting to note that the patriarchs and matriarchs, there are a number of fascinating differences that go generation to generation. Avraham and Sarah, as you know, have two children, Yitzchak and Yishmael, or Yishmael and Yitzchak chronologically. Yishmael and Yitzchak. And we know that Yishmael was doing stuff that was not ideal. How do we know that? It says he was playing with Yitzchak. Now, playing in the Torah, the word playing, metzachek, in the Torah is used in three contexts. It's used to mean sexuality, it's used to mean murder, and it's used to mean idolatry. The Jews played around the golden calf. What does it mean there? Idolatry. It says the Philistines shot arrows at the Jewish captives as they're running away. Right? They were playing with them. That's murder. And it says that Avimelech, king of the Philistines, saw Yitzchak playing with his wife. Sexuality. So when it says Yishmael was playing with Isaac, that doesn't have great connotations. It's not like they're not just doing, I don't know. They're not like playing Fortnite or something like that. You know, let's get this pita bread, whatever, right? But rather, this is bad stuff. So what happens? Anyone know what happens? Sarah. What does Sarah say?
Get him out.
Get him out. Throw Yishmael out. What's Abraham's reaction? No. And it was very bad in Abraham's eyes because it's his son. He didn't want to throw him out. So what happens is God comes to Avram and says, my wife's favourite verse in the whole Torah, everything that your wife says, listen to her. It says everything Sarah tells, listen to her voice. But it's interesting, it says listen to her voice. It's sort of a weird thing. When it says listen to her voice, Rashi in the Venice edition, Rashi comments, what do you mean the voice? If I say listen to me, I don't say listen to my voice. I went to a speech therapist. I had some throat problems a while back. I went to a speech therapist named Lorraine Yap, which I found amusing. She did not find it funny. I don't know why. Maybe because she heard the joke 5,000 times. But anyway. So I go to Dr. Yap, and she says, Rabbi, stand up please, and give me a class. I said, what subject? She says, I don't care. I want to hear your voice. She didn't care what I'm saying. It was listening to the voice. When you say listen to her voice, it's like a strange statement. So Rashi there says the voice of Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit speaking from within Sarah. So we have Sarah knowing what God wants intuitively, the Ruach HaKodesh, and Avraham, how does he know what God wants? God tells him. God tells him. Next generation, Yitzchak and Rivka. Yitzchak, I'm reminded that it's a little hot in here. It's a little warm. It's a little, you know, what's his name? The famous. There was an interview with this guy, Manson, Charles Manson. Yeah. So there was a journalist interviewed him, and he's in prison. They're in the interview room. He's going like this, and the interviewer says, "You okay?" And he says, am I crazy or is it hot in here? So anyway, so now, where was I when you interrupted me with this Charles Manson business? Oh yes, right, yeah. So now, the next generation, Yitzchak and Rivka. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. My mother's English, Leah Sholman. English people always have their pinky out when they. You ever seen that? Give me a pint of beer in a pub and they've got their pinky out, right? So I said, why do you have your pinky out? She said, well, if a peasant walks into the room, he can do this. Anyway, so the next generation, Yitzchak and Rivka. Yitzchak is fooled by his son Esau, and he wants to give him the blessings. Who is the one who tells Yaakov to take the blessings from his father? his mother Rivka. And what does Rivka say to her son? Ve'ata bani, and now my son, Shema B'koli, listen to my voice. She doesn't say, listen to me, just listen to my voice. There again, Kol, the voice of Ruach HaKodesh. So she knows that Esav is a fake, and Yaakov is the good guy, and she knows this, how? Don't know, she knows. How does Yitzhak find out? It is forced upon him by the outside circumstances. Next generation, Yaakov is living in the house of his father-in-law, Lavan. You already know it's not going to work out well. Right? Living in his father-in-law's house. And he's married to Rachel and Leah. Anyway, Lavan is ripping him off right and left. So Yaakov has a dream. God comes to him in the dream and he says, you need to leave the house of Lavan. So he goes to Rachel and Leah, it's their father, and he says, listen, he says, I had a dream last night. God said we need to leave. What is their reaction? Well, duh. That's not the Hebrew, but it says, but they say, Ha'od lanu chelek v'nachalayim avosein. Do we have any further portion with our father? Halo kanochriot nechshavnu. We are like strangers to him. Of course. So what's obvious to them is told to Yaakov in a divine dream. What do you see? So the Hamek Davar of Naphtali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, one of the great rabbis, Rosh Yeshiva of the greatest yeshiva in Europe, was the Volozhin Yeshiva, currently in Belarus. Then it was Lithuania. Right? Places didn't move, borders did. You know, I mean, you have to. So the Netziv Naphtali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin. So he says the following. He says that the specialization of women was Ruach HaKodesh. Ruach HaKodesh means the internal voice of God speaking from inside out. The specialization of the men, the prototype of the male was Nevuah. Nevuah means the voice coming from outside. He says, so Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, it was Nevuah. The voice came from outside, whether it was the dream of Yaakov, circumstances of Yitzhak, or actual God speaking to Abraham. It was coming from outside in. Whereas, in the case of the women, Sarah knew Yishmael had to be thrown out. How did she know that? From her own soul. God spoke from within. Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah all had the same idea. And he says that is a paradigm for all time. For all time, it is the woman's unique role is the focus on the internal self and the understanding of the internal self, which ties in what we said before about the Eastern style, so to speak, being, wholesomeness, etc., which allows one to focus on the inside, the inner self, and to understand intuitively. The male, who by the way is obligated to study Torah even in things which are not relevant or applicable immediately, and not just halacha, right? But why? Because the man needs the voice from outside. It's the voice from outside. So we have two different roles, and that explains, and we don't have time for all of that, but that explains a lot of the differences in halacha, right? There are 7 commandments which a woman is exempt from. Mitzvot asay shazman grama, the mitzvot which are to focus at specific times and step out of things and have a little tranquility, bind yourself, control yourself, stop, etc. Men need that more than women, right? The tranquility moments, etc. Shabbat we're all obligated in. And tefillah, prayer, all obligated in. So, according to the Rambam at least, but Ramban disagrees, but that's a technical issue, right? But again, we have some of these differences, and those differences are actually what make it vive la différence, as we say, and that actually makes the complete whole. So that's a little bit of an introduction to the subject of men and women, male and female, gender and Judaism. I'll be happy to take questions, heckling alternate speeches and political statements, endorsements of de Blasio, etc. But, no, maybe not that. Yes, you're right. Right, but we'll take, we have time for questions. People, I'll be happy to take questions. If anyone wants to leave, I won't be insulted. You had a question earlier, sir.
You were talking earlier about the two partsufim, the two halves or whatever of the Adam and Rishon.
Yes.
And I was wondering, Adam and Rishon was had two halves were technically in a complete state. So why was it low told but not good in that state?
Oh, excellent question. Right. It says that when Adam was both male and female, it says, Lo tov heyot ha'adam levado. It was not good for man to be alone. What that meant is not good for the human to be alone. Because if you have both within yourself, that means you are alone. You are completely self-sufficient. And what God is saying, that's not a good situation. To be completely self-sufficient, I don't need anyone else. I don't want anyone else. I don't need to receive from anyone else. That's not good. The word tov means actually things coming together to produce goodness, produce a positive outcome. There's only one time in creation where it says lo tov, not good, which is man alone. But there's only one day of creation where it doesn't say good. What day of creation does it not say good?
Monday.
That's right, the second day of creation. Why? The Gemara says, Bo nivra hamachaloket. That's when there was division created. That's the one day where instead of things coming together, things split apart. What split apart? The water above and below. So the Gemara says, Tov is not there. Right? But on the next day of creation, the third day, when God links together the water above and below through the weather system and agriculture, etc. What does it say? It says Tov, Pa'amay, old Israeli song, Bayom HaShishi, Hasidic song festival, right? Right, on the third day, Pa'amayim, it says it twice. That's the idea. So that's the answer. We'll take one more question because I'm expiring from the heat, right?
I have a question. It was Ruach HaKodesh that Sarah had. How come she didn't know she was having a baby? You're saying that she had divine inspiration.
Yes.
Why is it said in one place, but you don't say that she knew in another place?
It's a great question. There are two ideas here. Number one, prophecy and Ruach HaKodesh don't come automatically. A person could be ready and prepared for them and be completely in a situation where they are on that level. And as Maimonides tells us, he says, but you may not have prophecy for years. That depends on God. Now, secondly, also, the Talmud says that sometimes God deprives a person of something that they most want in order to elicit from them the response of prayer. So the way Rav Hutner puts it, and except for that, he won't tell them something in order to elicit the appropriate response. Rav Hutner puts it, we think that we pray in order to get us out of trouble. He says, no, God puts us in trouble in order to get some prayer out of us. That's how he puts it, eloquently. Okay, so thank you very much for coming.
Thank you again, Rabbi Becher, for coming. I want to thank the Steinbergs for sponsoring tonight's event in memory of Dr. Steinberg's mother and the Stearns. Just forgot two upcoming events. We are having the Miracles of Israel with Rabbi Y.Y. Rubenstein at Shalom Torah. Sponsorship is open for that. And then we are doing the MGC and Torah Links is doing a 9/11 memorial program with Ari Schonbrunn, who's on the 78th floor of one of the towers, and he survived, so he'll be speaking here. And sponsorship is also open for that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rabbi Becher. And